Let's talk about the biggest, angriest beefcake in 40k, Khârn the Betrayer. After my video on Lucius the Eternal, I decided, completely on my own and with no outside help, to make a video on each of the 4 mortal champions of Chaos. So who is Khârn the Betrayer? Well, he is first and foremost a superlative warrior, the only one of Angron's sons he ever came close to respecting, and able to 1v1 basically anyone else in the setting and come out on top, or at least put up a very good fight. He, and the World Eaters at large, hold a special place in my heart because of the tragedy of their fall. But to truly understand the depths of that fall to Chaos, we need to start at the beginning of the Legion, when they were known as the Warhounds. Conveniently, Khârn was there for that. He was among the first Terran recruits to the Legion in the years before they were reunited with their primarch, Angron, making him one of the oldest Marines in the current setting, Eye of Terror time dilation notwithstanding. Recruited from somewhere in Eastern Europe, Khârn quickly rose to become Centurion of the Legion's 8th Assault Company. Khârn the Bloody, as he became known, personified the controlled savagery that defined the young 12th Legion. It was a force of ruthless, brutally efficient warriors, held in check by iron discipline and martial nobility. In battle, the Warhounds fought in a close-ranked phalanx, an unstoppable wall of spear and shield that slowly advanced on its foe, slaughtering anything in front of them. Imagine the opposite of the Space Wolves, controlled savagery that was only later unleashed by their unstable primarch. Speaking of their primarch, Angron's introduction to his legion was not as straightforward as his brother's. After seeing his son making a desperate last stand on New Syria, the Emperor decided it wasn't worth the effort of sending a single custodian down to fight with them and secure Angron's undying loyalty. Instead, he teleported Angron off the planet, leaving his brothers in arms to die and the officers of the Warhounds to deal with their primarch on their own, which, to be fair, they did try to do. Unfortunately, Angron was in the middle of a bit of a mentee-bee and killed every single officer who approached him, except Khârn. The officers of the Warhounds refused to fight back against their dad, and Angron saw this as weakness. Khârn, however, somehow managed to talk to Angron through the nails, convincing him that it wasn't because his sons were weak, but because they respected him. Khârn spoke to Angron not as a son, but as an equal, proud warrior to proud warrior, telling his father of the victories his legion had won in service to the Emperor. Angron liked the sound of that, and emerged from his man cave to lead his new legion, renaming them from the Warhounds to the Eaters of Worlds, the World Eaters, and appointing Khârn as his equerry. In this role, Khârn served as a combination of high-ranking captain, counsellor to his primarch, and diplomat. As far as the Astartes warriors go, he was unusually good at that last part. He was thoughtful and reasonable, one of the very few in his legion who could convince Angron to be slightly less aggressive at times, speaking with a quiet, soft voice that was rarely raised in anger, at least until the introduction of the Butcher's Nails. In an effort to win their father's approval, most of the World Eaters, including Khârn, agreed to have the nails implanted. Cybernetic implants dating back to the dark age of technology, the Butcher's Nails granted increased strength and aggression in battle, with the minor downside of making their victims unable to feel pleasure in anything except killing. Predictably, this transformed the World Eaters from noble, disciplined warriors into a horde of marauding berserkers, driven only by the impulse to spill blood. Reavers and murderers, not warriors, as Centurion Mago of the Legion said. As I hinted earlier, not all of the World Eaters agreed to be implanted, seeing the harm it would cause them, and had already caused Angron. Led by Mago, these warriors clashed with the rest of their legion on the planet of Genna, hoping to subdue Angron and his followers, to take them before the Emperor for judgment. Unfortunately for them, the nails did make their victims very good in a fight, and Mago was killed by Khârn, a brother he had once sworn he would give his life for. 10,000 years later, after the heresy, Khârn would stumble across Genna again, finding a statue of Mago from the Great Crusade when they had originally conquered the world. In a brief moment of clarity, even through the stabbing pain of the nails, he remembered his fallen brother and was confronted with the truth of how far his legion had fallen in the name of pleasing the ruined demigod that was their father. And that didn't even work. Angron was a distant and abusive dad to his legion, and that remained the case even after the nails. If you'll forgive me padding shortening the runtime of this video by reading a quote, Khârn himself said it best when speaking to the best character in the entire Heresy series. "It is our shame to bear before the other legions, brother. Angron was broken long before he ever reached us. Why do you think we let him beat the nails into our heads? We hoped that by breaking ourselves on the same anvil, we'd finally feel unity with our father." There was nothing of mockery in the word-bearer's reply, only sympathy. Khârn's skin crawled. He'd have preferred mockery. It didn't work. The drop pod's sides closed in, armour plating locking to block all view of the hangar beyond. Khârn's last sight was of Argol Tal ascending the gang ramp into a red 17th Legion gunship. "No," he muttered, as much to himself as to the distant word-bearer. It didn't. At the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, Angron and the World Eaters, including Khârn, were quick to side with Horus. By this point, the nails had consumed the Legion, and most of its warriors no longer cared who their next victims were, only that they quieted the pain in their skulls. Khârn fought beside Angron on Istvan III, dueling Garviel Loken of the Sons of Horus while screaming about the Eightfold Path, until he was run over by a tank and impaled on its dozer blade. As badly wounded as you'd expect someone crushed under a tank to be, Khârn nevertheless recovered, the start of a trend of miraculous recoveries that really don't get talked about enough, especially compared to Lucius. From there, Khârn travelled to Prospero to seek a cure for the nail's degradation, although he failed, before being assigned to Ultramar to fight alongside the word-bearers against the Ultramarines. It was here he met Argol Tal, striking up a close friendship and fighting beside him in the World Eater's gladiatorial pits. Khârn rarely fought in the pits, aside from his duels with Sigismund of the Black Templars, another of his few close friends before the heresy. Sigismund was a member of the Imperial Fists, perhaps the greatest duelist of any Astartes legion or chapter in the history of the setting. He was the first of that legion to accept the Emperor as divine, and was disowned by Dawn for doing so, given black armour and a cool sword during the Siege of Terror, and sent in to kill as many traitors as possible or die trying, before founding the Black Templars after the heresy. His friendship with Khârn is the reason the Black Templars chain their weapons, although it's best not to mention that to them. Outside of Argol Tal and Sigismund, Khârn avoided the pits, and viewed them less as entertainment or martial practice, and more as an exercise in control, fighting to retain lucidity against the bite of the nails. Another Nucerian tradition that Khârn ignored was the superstition around inheriting weapons. After one of Angron's huge chain axes was damaged and discarded, Khârn recovered and repaired it for himself. The weapon saw its first use in one of the most satisfying moments in the entire Heresy series, his duel against Erebus in the pits. Seeking vengeance for Argol Tal, who Erebus had murdered, Khârn beat the ever-living shit out of him, cutting off his hand and trying to kill him, only failing when Erebus used the warp to escape like a little bitch. During the Siege of Terror, Khârn was the first World Eater to reach the walls of the palace, and among the only ones in his legion able to resist the pull of the nails and attempts to coordinate their advance. Despite this, he saw the traitor assault halted and Angron banished by Sanguinius. Throwing himself uncaring into the fray, Khârn slew loyalist champions without even noticing who they were, until he was finally stopped by Sigismund. Sigismund was absolutely locked in at this point, an emotionless killing machine who didn't even acknowledge Khârn. That complete lack of the camaraderie they once shared, replaced only by cold hatred, made Khârn realise what the traitors had unleashed upon the galaxy. He even had a vision of the future cold, uncaring killers that the Black Templars would become. Once again, Khârn was left for dead, his body carted off into the Eye of Terror by the shattered remnants of his legion. He remained in a coma aboard one of their warships, used by their captain as a bargaining chip to hold the warbands together, who hoped that Khârn would wake up, reunite the legion, and lead them to victory against the Imperium and the other Chaos legions who fled into the Eye. Khârn remained comatose until some of the other Astartes tried to assassinate him. At that point, he woke up, killed half the ship while naked and probably still half asleep from his big nap, which should tell you something about just how absurdly strong this big beefy hunk was. Upon his revival, Khârn sought to unify his shattered legion in the only way he knew how: battle. They attacked Scalathrax, a planet under the control of their former allies, the Emperor's Children. This campaign lasted quite a while, extending into the planet's winter. During this time, the planet was so cold that even the transhuman warriors of the World Eaters could not fight effectively, and thanks to Khârn's slightly questionable questionable mental state at the time, he decided to warm them up with a flamethrower. It was this severe and continuous lapse in judgment that led to Khârn being named the Betrayer, the noble captain of the elite 8th Assault Company, equerry to Angron, the warrior who had resisted the law of the nails longer than anyone else in his legion, finally fell to the influence of Khârn and the constant pain of his implants. After Scalathrax, the World Eaters collapsed completely, disintegrating into disparate warbands after the fall of the one man who might have united them. At the head of his warband, the Butcher Horde, Khârn has pillaged the Imperium for the past 10 millennia, often unaware of his actions and utterly lost to the nails. An unwilling champion of the blood god Khârn, if an effective one. So that was Khârn the Betrayer, a big muscular stud on the surface and a tragic character underneath. His entire arc across the Great Crusade and the Heresy has been him raging against the monster he inevitably devolved into, all because of the mutilation of Angron on New Syria. I think he functions well as a mirror of Angron in miniature, a noble warrior worn down by trauma and the cycle of abuse. Who'd have thought a screaming lunatic with an axe 3 sizes too big would end up being one of the most compelling characters in all of 40k. If you watched this far into the video, thank you so much. It really does mean a lot. Please let me know in the comments if there's anything I missed or anything you want to add. Like, subscribe, all the rest, and I'll see you in the next video.